Hello, everyone, and happy holidays. I am Matt Williamson, and the sky's kind of fallen, but it's not 100% fallen. Yeah, I mean, we still got a nice long break before the Bengals. See what happens there. Most likely going to Houston in round one. They're pretty terrible right now. But anyway, I'm here to talk Steelers-Chiefs more with you guys. Couple numbers I want to talk about. Then we're going to get into snap counts, and then I'll have a whole bunch of observations for you. I always reference EPA per play. It really breaks things down to the lowest common denominator. When you snap the ball, the results of those plays. The Steelers' EPA per play was minus 0.13. Zero's average. The Chiefs were at positive 0.27, really 0.28. In terms of every time they snapped the ball, they basically produced about 0.28 of a point on the scoreboard. Big discrepancy. Average plays per drive. Steelers were at 6.8. Chiefs were only at 6.6. But average yards per drive, 34.5 to 31.5 favoring Kansas City. Average points per drive, 2.6 versus 0.8. Yuck. That's a big discrepancy. It just tells the story. Here's another one. Both offenses had 14 red zone plays. One team had 4 red zone touchdowns and 1 red zone field goal. The other team had 1 of each. I'll let you guess which is which. All right. I don't usually talk much about the opponent's snap counts, but there's one thing that stood out to me was the Chiefs' receiver usage. Their first-round pick, Xavier Worthy's really taking over the number one role here. He was out there for 53 snaps. Juju was next at 31, and I wonder, I'd have to go back and watch, is that just kind of a Andy Reid taking care of his guy late in the game versus former team type of thing? Or he did see him out there a lot, but I thought maybe that was just a playing with the lead thing. DeAndre Hopkins for 29, 25 for Marquise Brown, and Justin Watson, 21, made a big play, obviously. All right, Steelers snap counts. 75 for Wilson, Frazier, McCormick, Jones. 68 for Dan Moore. 68 for Pickens. 63 for Siamalu. 56 for Austin. 45 for Muth. Warren outsnapped Harris 40 to 34. 32 for Van Jefferson. Mike Williams, 31. I don't think he knows what he's doing still. Anyway, Darnell Washington, 26. Connor Hayward, 21. Spencer Anderson was out there for 13 in relief duty. Michael Pruitt for 10. Scott Miller for 10. Max Sharping for 7. And Cordarrelle Patterson for 1. Steelers defensive snap counts. Queen and Minka led the way with 62. Elliott, 58. Jackson, 58. Highsmith, 52. Cam, 50. Watt, 49. Trice, 47. Might want to see more of him. Sutton, 43. 38 for Benton. 33 for Roberts. 29 for Peyton Wilson. 23 for Nick Herbig. Ogunjobi for 20. Pierre for 18. KZ for 16. Would mind seeing more of him, too. More on that later. Adams for 13. Loudermilk for 6. Jeremiah Moon for 5. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today and get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Pat Mahomes is really good, but he was really, really good in this game. And the quickness at which the ball came out and things like that were miraculous. And I have some numbers to show you that. I mean, They don't paint the Steelers in a great light. Spoiler alert. Mahomes had a season high 127.1 passer rating. That's not great. He was 29 of 38 for 320 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. His first game with 300 more passing yards, 3 touchdowns or more, and 0 interceptions since week 11 of 2022. Now, my buddy Mike Sando works for The Athletic, tweeted this out about Mahomes, which is just kind of ridiculous. The 2.34 average time to throw was the fastest of his entire career and highly efficient, as you might have noticed. So if you look at, this is what Sando did. If you sort all of Mahomes' starts by time to throw, in his 14 quickest games, including this one, he's 14-0. In his 31 quickest games, he's 30-1. 30-1. In his 72 quickest games that the ball came out on average, he's 57-5. Wow. In the 9 slowest games, he's 1-8. 1-8, and for a guy that never loses. In his 17 slowest games, he's 6-11. Now, we could definitely say we need to be on top of this stuff. Can't let him get the ball out that quick. Well, I don't think they had the corners to handle it. But there's a chance these teams meet again, and let's keep that stuff in mind, obviously. So he was also 20 of 24 on pass attempts under 2.5 seconds for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Steelers. It's really tough to get home under 2.5 seconds. That's what they call a quick pressure. And they're pretty rare. That 190 yards is his most in a game this season on 2.5 or under. He was also effective under pressure, completing 5 of 7 for 102 and a touchdown. I start with this because his ability to get the ball out quick, I thought, was not the difference in the game, but it was the special part of the game that nobody, but especially the Steelers defense, could handle. Steelers generated just an 18% pressure rate against the Chiefs the entire day. Their lowest pressure rate generated in a game this season. A lot of that's because the ball came out. A lot of that's because the Chiefs are good. A lot of that's because Steelers didn't play very well, obviously. Our boy TJ Watt, 0 pressures on 31 pass rushers. His first game without a pressure since week 7 of 2023. Highsmith generated 2 pressures on 29 rushes. His third lowest pressure rate, though, in a game this season. Highsmith matched up against Joe Thuney on 21 pass rush snaps and did not generate a pressure against Thuney. Xavier Worthy, we talked about him too. Hauled in a season-high 8 catches on 8 targets for 79 yards and a touchdown, with most of his production coming on open. They call that 3 or more yards of separation. Fine, whatever. 7 receptions, 58 yards, 1 touchdown. 7 of his 8 targets were deemed open by 3 or more yards. I mean, that's really open in the NFL. 72 of his yards came after the catch. That's a season high, career high. For plus 21 yards after the catch over expected, his most in a game ever. Let's go to the Steelers quarterback. I talked about this yesterday, but Wilson's been really bad late in the down over these past few games against top competition. And really for much of the season. And maybe that's just who he is now. That scares the heck out of me, big picture. But boy, it was really noticeable against the Chiefs. I mean, as later and later the down went on, the worse and worse he became. And he only completed 1 pass of 20-plus yards in this game. That's his thing, and you had Pickens. Again, he was 1 of 6 on deep balls. And he threw an interception. He had his lowest success rate on deep balls this year. And he, coming into this game, he had the highest success rate on deep passes of all quarterbacks. His success rate coming into this game on deep balls was 51.4%. Exceptional. But in this game, it was 16.7. You hope it's a one-off. You know what I mean? There were, after watching this and more review, there were a lot more schemes and matchups to the Steeler passing game that the ball didn't come out. Like, yeah, I can understand if you're not the biggest Arthur Smith fan, but he created matchups in the Steelers passing game to their favor. And a lot of that was on Wilson. There was times, several, where the ball needs to come out and it doesn't. Whether he didn't see it or hesitated or held the ball, there were plays to be made there. And frankly, he doesn't process the entire field well enough and never really has. I mean, like, that sounds like, oh, he's a loser, he stinks. No, I mean, he needs a running game, Wilson. And again, that doesn't mean he stinks. Most quarterbacks in the NFL have some sort of issue they need to overcome or be aided with. Now, Mahomes doesn't, Allen doesn't, Burrow doesn't, but they're the best we've seen. They're ridiculous. And a lot of it's because his lack of height. I mean, when the pocket is condensed late in the downs and there's a lot of big bodies around him, there's just a lot he doesn't see. And it really showed up in this game. And I also think there's been throws, too many, where I question his arm strength a little bit, where he underthrows deep balls, or instead of, a 25-yard completion could have been a touchdown, but if he gets it out or throws it with more zip. So it's something to pay attention to. My man Jaylen Warren, who I love at the moment, always really have. 71 yards on 11 carries, 3 explosive runs, created 12 rushing yards over expected, his most in a game this season, recorded most of his rushing yards after contact, averaging 5 yards after contact per carry. That's really, really good. I mean, just think about first contact. If you're getting 5 yards plus after that, you're doing something right. So he was excellent. I also thought Frazier and Siamalu had good games. I didn't think the tackles played very well. And frankly, I think Dan Moore is making a strong case to just let him walk. That's becoming pretty obvious to me, that he's kind of just a guy, and it's not worth breaking the bank to keep him back or, changing your whole agenda for that. Their offensive lineman, Caliendo, the left guard, he got abused all day. It didn't really matter, obviously, but I also think the Chiefs' defensive tackles had long days, because Frazier and Siamalu were playing well. It goes hand in hand. Cam Hayward was awesome. I thought their linebackers played really well. Bolton and Tranquil, they showed up really big, as did Justin Reed. So some of their off-the-ball, middle-of-the-field defenders were really, really good in this game. As I mentioned, Cam was unbelievable in this game. Highsmith was really good, too. Trice might have been under the radar, but Pierre got benched quickly for him. And I thought this was a very promising game for Trice. I mean, it might be time to... let's really go all in on this kid. Long week, see where we stand. Maybe you have something. Maybe you even have a starter for next year. I want to see more and more and more. Watt had a tackle for loss and a pass defense, while Highsmith had a pass defense and Herbig had a quarterback hit. But because of the time and the great game plan, obviously, and Mahomes, they were not able to take advantage of the bad tackle situation nearly enough and didn't affect this game as much as they really usually do. I'm not super concerned, but this has been a little bit of a stretch where Herbig's been pretty quiet. Just throwing it out there. I'm also, as you know, a big Monty Adams fan, and I frankly expected more since his return than we've gotten. Another rough performance by Dante Jackson. I'm really soured on this guy. I mean, brutal. Something I do a Thursday night show with Merrill Hodge and Mike Pursuta, and something he pointed out that is very true that I just haven't mentioned or really dug into. But the coverage, the defense as a whole was having a big problem against trips and bunches 3-by-1 sets, the 3 receiver side. Queen's not adjusting to it well. Sutton's been a disaster with this regard in this specific area, amongst others. And it's one of those things, like, even this, of course, the Steelers, their defensive back coach, their defensive coordinator, just to show you how this stuff works, I'm not making excuses. They know this is a problem. These 3 offensive coordinators' faces know it's a problem, but there's been like no practice time in these 11 days to really work on it and get it fixed. So you just kind of keep bleeding out, and the teams just keep doing it to them over and over. So if you go back and watch how much production they had on 3 receiver side of the field. I know everybody wants to place blame on this defense and their coverage, and there's plenty to go around. But more and more, if you want to pick out one guy, it's Cam Sutton. He is a major liability on the field right now. He can't run. He doesn't recognize things. He doesn't have the quickness for the slot. He doesn't really have the physicality, run stuffing, blitzing from the slot. Beanie's a better player than him, and that's not saying much. And something Dale threw out today, which I think makes all the sense in the world, is when you're in nickel and dime, I think Minka needs to be your slot and KZ needs to be your free safety. Sutton is the problem, or a problem that is at least a quick fix. I'm going to give Mark Robinson a little credit. 3 big plays in the last 2 weeks, including 1 on defense. So good for him. I mean, a core special teamer, but interesting. Just want to at least throw that out there. This is just kind of when it rains, it pours, but the Steelers are forcing fumbles. They're just not landing on them or recovering them. And sometimes you get bad fumble luck. When it rains, it pours. And that also goes for ball gets batted in the air. Pretty easy pick for Patrick Queen. Can't haul it in. That cost you, like 40 or 50 yards of field position? Tomlin said after the game, this is an exact quote, the first touchdown drive was 40 yards that the Steelers allowed. We turned the ball over in the second half. I think that was a 20-something yard drive in that half. Can't do that. I mean, the stakes are higher. The road narrows, to quote Tomlin. You give short fields to Mahomes and Burrow and Allen, and the dudes you're going to face, you just faced or about to face or going to face in the playoffs, they will torture you, especially Pat Mahomes. Tackles for loss. Just kind of end on a good note here. Sorry. Nope. I misread it. Chiefs had 6 tackles for loss. The Steelers only had 2. That's not so great. But runs in which the ball carrier reached at least 15 miles an hour. This is a stat that I've been paying more attention to because I think that's like you actually get free. You get to really open up your stride as a ball carrier. Kansas City only had 3 of those. They didn't run the ball much, but the Steelers had 7. They had 7 runs where the ball carrier got to 15 miles an hour or more. I've been doing this lately, and just something else to throw out there. But immediately after the game, Pro Football Focus puts out their highest graded players and player of the game. It might surprise you that the highest graded player was Cam Hayward, followed by Justin Reed, who I mentioned had a good game, Trent McDuffie, an exceptional corner. They were the top 3. And they gave player of the game to Cam Hayward. Delivered a dominant performance, earning a 90-plus grade on first review. From 32 pass rush snaps, he tallied a hit, 2 hurries, 4 additional pass rush wins that didn't result in pressure. Hayward was equally impactful against the run, recording 5 solo tackles, 4 of which were defensive stops, without missing a single tackle. Total superstar. Couple things that are going to make your stomach turn. This is the second time in the past 35 years that Pittsburgh has a minus 50 or worse point differential in a 3-game stretch. Ew. The Steelers have 3 consecutive losses by 14 or more points for the first time since week 5 through 7 of 1988. Yuck. And the Steelers allowed 25 points or more in 3 straight games for the first time since week 2 through 4 of 2018. Last thing I got for you. And this is not even in the slightest dismissing the situation. But I was listening to Ross Tucker's podcast, a friend of mine who I hosted a podcast at ESPN with quite a bit. And Ross was in Pittsburgh on Christmas doing the game. He was the color guy for the game. And on his podcast, he brought up a point I hadn't thought of. And this is, again, is not an excuse. I think it's just an explanation. I looked at this 3-11 stretch for these four teams and thought, wow, the road team on Christmas is at such a disadvantage. Such a disadvantage. You got to FaceTime your kids and, Daddy, when are you coming home? And is Santa coming? And why aren't you home? And all that. But as a former player, Ross took the total opposite approach, which now I am 100% on board on. And here's why. He said, on a situation like this on Christmas, all I have to do as a player is get to the facility, get on a plane, go on a business trip, come home, and the stockings are hung by the chimney with care. And, you come home victorious or not. The house is set. Christmas is done. You guys have your own thing. Cool. But here's the kicker. He said, as the home team, remember, none of these players are from Pittsburgh or Houston. They're from LA or Mississippi or Maine or Timbuktu. And there's a high percentage chance that said player is probably the wealthiest human being in their family. I think that's probably safe to say, especially if you're a veteran. Well, what do you think these guys want to do? I mean, with their families come to town and you put them up. It's in a hotel or your house or whatever. But it's a lot of commotion. I mean, it's a lot of commotion. It's not a normal work week for you. Mom's coming in from South Dakota and your cousin's coming in from New Mexico or whatever. It's just a lot to think about. You don't get to get away and get your mind right. You have distractions from that regard. And I just thought that was worth bringing up. I hadn't thought of that from a player perspective. So, again, it's not why they lost. It's not why the Texans lost. It's not why the Steelers lost. But I looked at it the other way leading up to the game. All right, everyone. Take care. Good stuff.